start with the script. Are we going to have to read the script like forever?
Yes, we're gonna read it at your funeral.
What?
When you die, we're still gonna be reading. It's gonna go on forever and ever.
Going to be
and
on a Zoom funeral.
Okay, so anyway, good evening. In accordance with the requirements of the open meeting law, please be advised that this meeting is being recorded and broadcast over the Lunenburg Public Access Channel, and this meeting of the Finance Committee is being conducted remotely. The town of Lunenburg, in response to the COVID-19, is currently following the guidelines from the Lunenburg Board of Health, Massachusetts Department of Public Health, and the CDC regarding the virus and steps communities can take to prevent the spread. And all town facilities are you guys currently closed and only open for appointments? Okay, and all public meetings are being conducted remotely. Any votes taken tonight will be taken by roll call. We do have public comment at the beginning and at the end of the meeting. If you're unable to join via Zoom and you want to make a public comment, you are welcome to send an email to tburchfield@lunenburgonline.com, and we will read it into the record at the end of the meeting if you identify yourself and where you're writing from. With that, we'll go to, does anybody have any announcements? I do not. Does anybody have any public comment?
Do you want me to bring up my email and public comment?
Sure, that would be a good place to bring up your email.
Okay, so in my email, I asked for the committee to receive from the town department, Heather, and the school department, the information that we would need in regards to COLAs and things like that. Because I know Peter talks about it a lot. And I think it would be easier if we had all of the information that we need at our fingertips so that we can actually talk about it and not bring it up at meetings. Because in doing the minutes, I've seen that we brought it up in almost every meeting, and yet we don't have the information that we need to look at it and actually see what the numbers mean. So from Heather, I thought we could get the numbers from each department, like how many staff members there are, and the salary,
percent increases,
the percentage increases, and what percent, if there was a 2% increase and a 2.5% increase, what that would mean in money, in a figure for the budget, how that would financially impact the budget for the town side. And I thought that we should do that also for the school side. We would have to make that request from Kate or Mr. Cassidy, Dr. Burnham or Mr. Cassidy, and get the numbers for how many people there are in the teachers, the paraprofessional, the custodial, the clerical, and the administration, and the figures for that as well. Because seeing it, numbers don't lie. So we need to see the numbers, so that we can compare when we say that the last town meeting, the fire department got a 2% increase, but we also heard that they were underpaid. So it would be nice to see what they provided, what was the information, the towns around us, what is their average salary and what is our average salary in comparison? Like, what are the steps for each department? I don't know what the steps are. Do you guys know what the steps are?
I do, because I asked last time around. But
Right,
Okay.
right.
But I would like to have that information as well, because I don't know what the steps are for each department. And like, what's our average step?
And it's not uniform. You're right.
Right. And I would like just to see it so I can compare, and what's the average salary for, say, a firefighter as opposed to a teacher, a paraprofessional, the clerical staff at the town as opposed to the clerical staff at the schools.
Okay, so you'd like, basically, if we could get into the OneDrive copies of the salary schedules for each of the groups.
Yeah. How
And
many employees are in each group, broken down by group, not just the town employees, and by group. It would be nice to see that.
Right, so you want to know how many firefighters we have?
Yeah.
How many police officers we have?
Yeah.
How many DPW workers we have?
Yes,
All right,
correct.
so how easy, hard is that, Heather? Would that be something we get from Julie, or we would just be able to get it from?
I'll take a little bit. I mean, just because I'm doing the budget right now and
Right.
in a week. But,
I know. I think it's just useful to see right now, especially with 7 contracts that are going to be negotiated this year. It would be nice just for the finance committee to see how it's going to impact the budget.
Yeah, and I think the information probably exists. I think basically, I mean, if it's easier for us to try to get it from Julie, then we can do that.
but we won't know that until we conclude, as we won't know that until we conclude negotiations.
No,
but
we don't know the results yet, but I think
No.
at least if we start with a count, because basically the department heads, when they come in, they actually present all of that information
right.
separate from
Like,
each other.
so say like if police is already negotiated, but the fire would come in, they have to negotiate again. But it would be nice for us to know in advance, okay, so there are, let's say, 13 firefighters, and a 2% increase means this, and a 2.5% increase means this in money. Not that I don't know that what they're going to negotiate, but I just think it would be nice to know ahead of time what figures you're talking about before you present it to town meeting, so that finance committee has that information, well, whether it's negotiated or not. It just would be nice to have the numbers beforehand.
Right, we actually, if we just start with the base, we can figure out the 2%
Right.
and the 0.5%. We just need the
We could
base.
do that, but yeah, the base would be nice.
And I think Heather's point around the historical and comparative information
Right.
is also helpful from just sort of an apples to apples perspective. Because you're absolutely right, Heather. And frankly, it's hard to remember. Like, for example, the firefighter contract. Chief went through some comparative information with us last year when we went through the budget process. I didn't remember. Like, I had to be reminded at town meeting, because I didn't remember that. So it's all very helpful information.
And there are 3 of us who were not on finance committee last year.
Yep.
So it would be nice to have that information for all 3 of us to have, so that we could look at it now.
Right, and I think the other thing is that, like, certainly the other part of the presentation that comes in is, again, with the police and the fire building their positions to try to come to a better number of staff on hand, then it's also easier to see what the effect of that addition is. Because basically we're still in the process of getting that coverage up, so.
Right.
So anyway, so yes, you're welcome to ask for it. We won't expect it from you before you do the budget, okay?
Oh, Heather, you're talking to Heather. So can I send an email to Dr. Burnham and Mr. Cassidy?
Yeah, just CC us.
Okay.
That would be great.
Okay. So I will do.
And that's fine. We can ask for whatever we want, how quickly, or, like, whether we get it or not, because,
Right.
I know that the other part of, and I don't know if public comment is the place to bring it up. We could just go straight to committees and department presentations and get into the meat of what I missed last night when I didn't watch the Passios meeting.
Oh.
Missed out. Everybody was there.
Almost all of us. We had a quorum, but.
But anyway.
Peter was going to call the meeting to order.
Yeah, we were going to have Peter call it.
We probably should have.
Well, no, because basically you probably weren't.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. No.
You could talk to each other.
No, I'm
Without
kidding.
being seen. I know you are. But anyway, I'll follow the agenda. Is there any other comment from anybody, and before we get to?
I just have a brief comment. This past week, I received the Eagle House newsletter, which I only think I received not because of my age qualification, but perhaps because I'm on the finance committee. I'm not sure at this point. But I do receive it every month, and I do read it. And it was a pleasure to see the story about our own Heather Soroka in this month's newsletter, and her volunteer work in a number of capacities in the town, but in particular with our senior population. And I just wanted to make note of it. And I'm sure for those of you who are watching who do not receive the newsletter, it's probably available at the Eagle House or library or something. And it's worth taking a look at.
Hey, I think we receive it once you hit 50,
I am
Peter.
not 50.
You're
Yeah.
Well,
not.
actually, I think
See,
actually,
I got it once I hit 50.
well, it also could be that you just join the Eagle House supporters or something, so
I could be,
that
I
way
don't know.
you get it. Yeah,
I
just
really
gonna-
don't know. I'm glad to receive it, but
I'm just going to cover for you, Peter. But okay, no, that is really nice. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for acknowledging me.
well done. Thank you for your service.
Thanks.
Does anybody have anything any questions left over from last week with the 5-year forecasting capital plan? No?
I don't have any questions. I will say that, and I said this to Heather in an email, that I did like the one-pagers that she pulled together for each of the projects. It helped to visualize it and show, that there was thought through other sources of money and grant and a good overview of the project. So I do appreciate that.
Yeah, no, it was an excellent presentation of information. I
And
even
then-
understood it. Yeah.
And then the only other thing, that I think we got to be cautious of, like I said last week, is with all these potential projects out in front of us, what is the true 10-year outlook of the departments? I think that's kind of an important thing. And maybe as they come forward with their briefings, they make sure that they've kind of given that 10-year outlook of capital projects as well. Because they seem to probably wane off, and that's probably natural, but something to ask for.
Well, actually, I will say that before we get to the budget presentations, and Evan, actually, when you asked me, like what might be helpful for you to do in prepping for the budget season, since you are a liaison with fire and police, you might want to check in with them and in terms of how they're shaping their presentation, and actually ask them a question about, and could you go into a little bit about what you see down the road, like long-term for your department, especially since, Chief Sullivan has been doing it forever, so he should be able to be fine with it. But this is going to be the police chief's first budget presentation, so.
Did relay some of the things that were brought up, and Chief Gamble watched the meeting as well, so he knew. But and we talked about 10-year lookout for all the capital.
Yep.
But a lot of their projects going out, if the threshold is changed, drops off a lot of those projects. Besides vehicles.
It kind of it drops the projects off and then it ends up someplace else in the budget. Is that?
It would have to.
Mm-hmm. Is there another component to the budget that you're anticipating adding in order to accommodate that? Or it would just fall into the departmental budgets?
It'd have to fall into the departmental budgets. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Fiscal 23.
Okay. Did anybody have any questions, other comments about that? Okay. The department presentation schedule, did everybody get a copy?
Mm-hmm.
And you see that we're going to be busy like forever.
Yep.
Until town meeting. And then, we'll have a break before town meeting, but then, Peter, I don't know, did you want to work in there any particular way to address the component of the report that you're going to be writing? Any place that you want to discuss that?
Yeah, we should probably figure that out. I'm glad you mentioned it. I don't have a plan. but we should figure that out. So my recollection is that it needs to be submitted by the end of March. Is that correct, Heather? For the warrant?
Isn't it the week of the public hearing or something?
Isn't that the
schedule now?
March?
Yep. March
18th is the public hearing, I thought.
30th.
No,
it's
it's the
the
25th.
25th, and it's due the 30th.
30th.
So what we did last year for the finance committee letter on the warrant was we did it by acclamation, so to speak. It was circulated via email, and members were asked to comment essentially by exception to Michelle. I have to tell you, I was not comfortable with that process last year. I think it was a bit on the edge of what is allowable under open meeting. So I still think that it can certainly be circulated via email, and individuals can make comments, but those comments probably need to be read and addressed in an open meeting because otherwise it's deliberation, in my opinion. So what I would suggest is that we should probably have a solid draft by the 11th, even though it's ahead of the it's ahead of all of the hearings. We'll at least have the numbers from everybody and from Heather, and gather comments on the 18th for a final review on the 25th.
Okay.
Is that doable for everybody?
Yeah, and actually, it looks like the agenda should support it unless there's 25 different things that we have to have presented.
And I don't think it should be time consuming either. But I do think that it deserves a little bit of agenda time.
Yes. All right, so the 11th and the 25th.
The 11th, 18th, and 25th.
Oh, all of them, okay.
So but the 11th, I'm just wondering, by circulating a draft, I think we should at least have it available in draft form for the minutes. So I'll try to do that. I don't think it bears discussion on the 11th, but it should be submitted and made available.
I think on the 11th, we can just basically, make sure everybody's happy with the format.
Okay. Yep.
And then,
Someone want to post last year so that we can look at what was in it for us?
Yeah, it's right in the warrant from last year, which is available on the town website, but yeah, we can dig it out and put it on the share drive.
okay. No, looks, all right, so nobody has any questions or any concerns or anything on the budget presentation schedule?
I did send an email to Heather this week. In the past, I believe she's done all of the administrative functions. I think given the amount of change that we've experienced from an IT perspective this year, and the stress that we've put on that department, I think I'd like to hear from the IT director during that discussion. And I've also submitted some questions and concerns to Heather that I'd like to have addressed during that discussion, but it can be covered under that agenda item, I believe.
Okay, so he would be coming in with the administration. Is that correct, Heather?
Looking at the schedule. May want to have them come in the same night as the school. Because I think what here
Okay, so on the 18th?
revolve around the school as well.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's a fair point.
So I did forward that on to the IT director and the superintendent as well. So
Okay, thank you.
welcome.
Do we have a version which says which departments or which nights?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that went out. You didn't get that?
Heather sent that
I
this
might have
week.
missed it. I might have missed it.
It's from Heather.
Okay,
From you.
Yeah.
You want me to?
Done.
I got it.
Okay.
He's all zoomed out. Okay.
And Heather, is this schedule going to be posted on the website? I'm cognizant of the fact that we're having this conversation and nobody who's watching this can see the schedule we're all looking at. So
It can. I was waiting for confirmation from every.
okay.
I haven't.
You want me to pull it up?
No, I think we're about to go off of it now. So, I mean, basically if we were going to be talking about potentially trying to move people around, then, but I think that it's, it is what it is.
Okay.
And I'm going to, Jay's just having trouble getting in. On the 18th, and you're not getting any hints of any moneyed articles that we might need to be concerned about with people. When does the warrant close?
March 15th at 4.
We got a while yet.
Yeah, we do. I'm just, basically I think what I'd like to do is, if it's possible to, if people are submitting, if they're available on the night of the 18th, it would be good for them to come in, or people come in if there are any moneyed articles. But unless you guys are going to basically be bringing something in on Pastios, which will take all night anyway.
Look at his smirk. What is that, Dave?
Yeah, so, well, I think we might be at
Last
that.
evening was difficult at
Yep.
best.
So anyway, so Dave, how would you like to go into the committee report?
Oh, we're there already, huh?
Well, all right. I did go out of order. I can give you more time and say, did everybody have a chance to review the minutes that Heather put in the OneDrive?
A minute.
I did.
I did. I did make a couple changes,
Okay.
so just nothing major.
Okay.
And so basically, we have enough people nodding yes. So I'm going to ask if I can have a motion to approve the meeting minutes of November 12th.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Peter seconded. Okay, all in favor. Chris,
Aye.
Heather,
Aye.
Peter,
Aye.
Evan, Dave,
Aye.
and Jay
Jay's
did
not-
not make it in.
No,
I'm sorry?
he didn't make it in yet.
No, not yet. And that's an aye for myself, so. Now we are at committee and department reports. So go ahead, Dave.
Okay, I might as well get this over with. Okay, first of all, Parks Commission met Monday evening. And we had a very productive conversation with the skate park group. I think we're more on the same playing field than we've been in months. They're going to get back to us with some decisions that they need to make relative to our willingness to partner with them at Marshall Park on their project. We made it very clear that, if they decide to continue to pursue DC Passios property, that we would not stand in their way, and in some ways try to help out. But our preference was that it end up at Marshall Park. And that was pretty much our whole meeting Monday night. We have a regular meeting for regular Parks Commission business coming up on February 12th, which is a Friday, more because that was the only day of the week that everybody was available. Okay, TC Passios was, as I said a few minutes ago, at best for me, a very difficult meeting last evening. We got the preliminary, what we're calling the preliminary budget and numbers for the renovation and reuse of the building. It was came in substantially higher than we had hoped. And so we discussed some of our possible options with the architects and engineers. They're going to be working on those suggestions over the next couple of weeks on possible ways of trimming this budget down. And we'll be meeting again on February 17th to review those results and plan our way forward from there. We tentatively scheduled March 3rd and March 17th in anticipation of moving forward with some type of a presentation once we get past the 17th of February. So March 3rd will be get our ducks in a row for a public awareness meeting, workshop, whatever you want to call it, inviting the public to basically a public hearing on the proposal on March 17th. So that's where we are at with that. One more item, capital planning has a meeting coming up on February 2nd. We're going to be, I guess, doing another review of the capital projects that were not prioritized, or I'm not sure exactly what we're doing, but it's a continuation of the capital planning project process beyond what's presently plugged into the budget. And I also asked for some time in the agenda to discuss the fiscal policy as it relates to capital planning and capital projects. So I'm hoping we come out of tonight's meeting allowing me to bring some direction to the capital planning committee as to what this committee feels they'd like us to come to them with. I know we talked about it a little bit at the last meeting, but if we can talk about it a little bit more formally tonight. And I also need to find out where the fiscal policy is posted so I can download it and study that over the next week or so.
It's in the OneDrive.
It is, okay.
And it's also on the website. There's I don't have the link handy, but
Yeah, I think it's on the Selectmen's website.
Yeah. Honestly, I just haven't had time to look for it. I'm sure I would have found it. But going in 10 directions at the same time here, and all this research doesn't fit into the crosshairs.
Nope, I understand. All right, so are you guys assuming that you're going to have a presentation with figures to move forward for the spring or for the Passios? Do you think it's something that's you're going to be working on and knocking out longer than that? So it might be a fall meeting?
I can't answer that question at this moment. The general gist of all of the members of the committee was that with the number that was brought out last night, we do not have a viable project to bring to the town. It all depends on what we can do to mitigate those concerns between now and that first meeting in March.
Okay.
Yeah, so Dave, I mean, my expectation of the project was that it would be, 15 million or under, but coming in at 21 million, you're gonna have to do substantial changes to bring that number down. That's not a scalpel up exercise. That's a chainsaw kind of cut.
Oh, I totally agree. One of the problems is and some people think that, why is this so expensive? This is just a cosmetic renovation and we move in. And because of all kinds of regulation, that's not possible with the way we want to use this building. It was built under 1950s standards, and the building untouched, except for maybe putting a roof on it, would probably stand there for another 25, 30, 40 years. But because of requirements today, the building basically has to be brought up to code in all respects. So, the level 3 that it's bumped us into on the renovations includes structural steel added to the roofing, tying the walls to the roof and to the ground, and complete rip out of the electrical system, plumbing system. So, and none of that's cheap. But we're still hoping that we can come up with a viable project to bring to the town.
Right, but the other thing that kind of came across was that, reuse might mean level and rebuild as a more economical way of reusing. There's a point at which all the systems having to be replaced and all the structure having to be replaced, what are you saving by reusing at that point?
Yeah, and I was concerned that an awful lot of different numbers were thrown around last night without the thorough research done first. And I was really concerned about even bringing the budget to the public at last night's meeting, because we had only gotten it the day before at noontime. And I think that's one of the things that you attended the meeting, that I think we made it clear that we need to be able to make that comparison Selectman Jeffries was the first to ask for that. And he started the conversation about the numbers. And at the end of the meeting, I think we made it very clear that we want the real numbers. If we were to tear the building down and rebuild it in its similar configuration to today's code at prevailing wage. And a lot of the numbers that they were throwing out last night did not include prevailing wage with those numbers per square foot.
It didn't?
So some of them did not. No, and they said that they were not municipal projects.
Oh,
Some of them. The architect's numbers.
The speculative numbers around
Exactly.
rebuild. Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry if I misrepresented that, but and like I've always said, speculative numbers are sometimes, if they're shocking numbers, are the ones that stick in people's heads and could still be there at town
Kind of like
meeting.
10 to 14 million.
Yeah. Not to make light of it, but I made a comment to someone yesterday during the day talking about this whole situation. I said, well, if it was the Price is Right, I would have won door number one because I was the closest to the guess without going over. My estimate has always been 7 to 14 million.
Wow.
So that's where we're at. And, I don't think anybody expected that this was going to be an inexpensive project. And Peter, thank you for crunching the numbers quickly and explaining that it could actually fit into the budget within the policy, but it would have major ramifications in 24, 5, 6, I think you said, as we approach Turkey Hill.
Heather shared some numbers today that she's been working on, and I'm not even sure that what I said last night is factually accurate now. I think depending upon what interest rates we would bond at and that kind of thing, I think it would be razor close, to be honest with you. But we're still left with a big problem in the out years when it comes to TC Passios, which, excuse me, I keep saying those names interchangeably when it comes to Turkey Hill. Yep. It is what it is.
Yeah.
Any other committee reports?
Well, so I just got one more question. So
Okay, I'm sorry.
if the group's not meeting for 3 weeks to the next round, then there's no viable real path to getting this in front of.
I'm sorry. I got a message that Jay's sitting in the waiting room.
Yes, he is.
Is he there?
Yeah, he's trying to join again.
It's not working.
I don't know. He basically keeps saying joining and then he'll disappear.
Okay.
Chris, I got the gist of your comment, and that's that we're up against the clock and the calendar. And I don't totally agree with that, but it's getting to that 11th hour where, I'm sure we're going to have that discussion at the very next meeting. Because as I've said a couple of times at our TCP meetings that, we need to analyze probably at each meeting the calendar starting at town meeting date and work backwards and see where all the steps that we want to take before town meeting fit. And if they don't, then, it's obvious we're off to at the earliest fall town meeting.
Well, I thought we said last meeting that end of February, it would have to be on the ballot. It'd have to be on the ballot. Is that true, Heather?
Heather, it's got to be ready for the warrant, right? Whenever the warrant goes out to be printed.
Ballot question would have to be voted in
Oh, that's right.
February by the select board.
In February?
Mhm.
And that's driven by needing to be published in the warrant.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah, so that's my only, comment on that timeline is if you're not meeting till mid-February, February only has 28 days, you got almost no time to get onto the, to that schedule.
Mhm.
So seems like trying to rush it into this town meeting is not the right approach, given where we are right now. And with all the work that would have to go along to researching it and preparing it for the budget and the review associated with the budget with an already full schedule, it seems like that's a really long putt.
Could I,
I can't really speak for the committee, and in that respect, your concerns are noted, and I will bring those up at the next meeting, but I can't say one way or the other whether we move forward or not until we have a open meeting and decide as a committee what we're going to do moving forward.
Peter?
those of you who were at the meeting last night heard what I had to say. The analogy that I used was the 2-minute warning of a football game down 2 scores with no timeouts. You've got a very thin, narrow path to get to this thing as currently planned. And the problem with it is that there's a process of communication and campaigning and answering questions and allaying the concerns of the public, all of which needs to happen once there's a plan and once there's a number. And I don't think that on the timeline that you're on, I just don't think you might rush it, but in rushing it, you're less likely to be successful than you already are. And this is one that is going to be a stressor from a budget perspective, and I think is probably going to see some serious concerns out there. Just because of the numbers, just simply because of the numbers. And not to mention some of the other issues that we've talked about this evening, and I also brought up last night. I think that this needs a hearing at town meeting, but one that probably lands in the neighborhood of guidance to the committee in the form of a straw poll or a non-binding referendum or something like that. And a hearing of the financial picture that we're looking at, with an understanding of what's likely to come from Turkey Hill, an understanding of what the replacement cost would be if we or the cost would be if we were to do something similar from new, and a tear down, because we know now substantially more than we knew 2 years ago when we authorized this project. Substantially more, and I think that the committee would be very well advised to share the information at town meeting and allow the members of town meeting to respond, rather than speculating for another 6 months or a year where town meeting would be on this.
Yeah, right. And I think, obviously the committee is going to do what the committee does. And I think all of those points are well taken. And I think basically bringing something to town meeting, whether it's to vote or not. I will say that there'll be more people who show up if there is a number and it is on the ballot, and it is, you might even get a healthier discussion at town meeting over it. But again, that's, obviously the committee has its work cut out for it, for sure.
There's also something to be said for bringing a proposal forward, even if the number's high, if we feel it could be a viable project, if there's enough people on board with it, bring it forward, it fails, and then we go back to the drawing board and work out what we learned from town meeting. I mean, that's another route to take. I have a quick question for Heather. The impact on budget for this project, if it were, this is all hypothetical, if it were to pass in the spring town meeting, the effect on the budget really wouldn't be until 23 or 24. Is that correct? It wouldn't have any impact on 22 that I can think of.
So you would need to be short-term borrowing, I think. And it would have to involve all the design document costs, those types of costs. So
Yeah.
whatever that.
Oh, okay, so there is some cost that
Yeah.
in that time frame it would fall into 22.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I mean, the
than
other
that,
thing
there's-
that I was thinking is that it almost needs a look, based on what Peter was saying with this and Turkey Hill and some other big projects on the horizon, kind of a tops-down budget allocation saying that, this project, we're really looking for it to be a X million dollar project. In Turkey Hill, we're looking at to be a Y million dollar project. And then, whatever we do with Brooks and the other buildings, those are, this amount of money, so that we can really forecast out the next 10 years or 20 years or whatever it is and maintain that solid, fiscal position and still be allowed to buy vests for our police officers and cruisers for our police officers and textbooks for our students, so.
My understanding is Chris, you're more or less, you're right. I mean, right now we have a preliminary number for TC Passios. We have a number that the superintendent and John Londa and myself kind of drew out of state guidance for Turkey Hill based on its current size and enrollment that we can project out 5 or 6 years. My understanding from a previous meeting, I don't know if it was a meeting or a discussion that I had with the town manager around I think it was a discussion that we had, Heather, around the costs associated with the improvements that still need to be made to the other town buildings. I think, Heather, you had said that your intent was to basically fund most of that out of capital planning, right? That we're not looking at debt exclusions for that stuff.
Correct.
So it's really 2 big boulders we got to deal with: TC Passios and Turkey Hill.
And then equipment is the fire department's equipment comes back into rotation and stuff like that. I mean, you will
Very good point.
A number of high price items that will probably, I forget what's down the road.
A few $1 million worth of trucks. Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Good point.
Okay. Well, good luck, Dave.
Thanks.
Good luck to the committee. And then, that again, it's a big lift, and the whole, I mean, it would be nice if there, unfortunately, one of the things that I don't like about the fact that we've had a pandemic is that it would be nice to have some kind of an informational thing about the buildings, but not that actually you'd probably get more people attending if it was a Zoom one than actually, like going over to the high school. But at this point, it's tough to do anyway, just because we're coming into budget season, to do some kind of a presentation in terms of all the buildings. But
It would be what I was just going to say. What would be helpful for some people is to take a walking tour of the building, so they could see what you're talking about and what needs to be upgraded. Sometimes that's helpful, but I don't know that can happen right now. But maybe in the future it could happen if the project is to move forward or something. It's just something to keep in mind, because I think that a visual often helps people.
yeah, they could do
Especially people who haven't been in that building in years.
Yeah, but Heather, though, the costly part of this renovation is not visible. The big
Yeah, I
number
heard that.
items are all up in the
Yeah.
ceiling and down in the concrete and, on the wall and in the tile on the floor.
But they'll
Yes,
still
you
get
can.
you'll get an idea of how old it is.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree. I mean, it's still a viable building if you walk through it. It just isn't pretty.
There's also a conceptual aspect of this, though, that I think it's important that the public understand, right? Where stuff is going to go, how
Right.
much space there actually is. Do we really need to do everything that we're planning to do in that building just because we have the space available? If we were to do an alternative, could we do it with fewer square feet? Those are the kinds of things where until people are standing in the space looking around and get a real appreciation for how big that building actually is, I think we're selling the public short, that people really need to be able to understand this.
Right, and I think typically anytime there's been a building project here or a renovation project, that's been part of the process is bringing people into, and I think, and it probably would be helpful, and who knows, like maybe some people could do a tour on their way back from pickleball or something. If they're over there using the gym and, like talk in terms of it being town offices and a community center, whatever, what the function of the building is. But anyway, all right, well, since they still have a lot of work to do before they're ready to present, we'll move off of that committee. And I did not put a town manager and finance director report in tonight. I don't know if you folks have one. I'd invite you to do it at this time.
Karen, still on?
See, we already bored Karen to tears. Oh, there she comes.
Oh, there she is.
The only thing that I would have to offer tonight is just to let you know that we did get in touch with the regional retirement system regarding the unfunded liability portion of the pension, and it would be paid in full in 2036. And
All right, I'm not hearing you well, Karen. No.
Yeah, Karen.
Our assessment for this year was $1,559,283, and of that amount, $1,092,525 was for the unfunded liability portion of the assessment. So our assessment will drop off significantly in 2036.
In 2036.
Far away, but
Can't wait.
yeah, it's a long time away, but I mean, it's in the foreseeable future, at least.
Wow. Yeah, I couldn't remember. I remember being on the finance committee the first time that our budget was hit with it. And I just remember, we had plans for that money right up until we were told that, nope, got to spend it here. It was a surprise that year. So yeah, it's nice to know that will come to an end. And by then, who knows, that'll be our regular contribution in 20 years.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. If there's nothing else, then we can go ahead and, I'm sorry, Peter.
I just wanted to, and I don't know, Heather, if you were planning on mentioning, the governor's budget came out yesterday. So I don't know if you had any comment on that or.
Yeah, I had a couple updates myself
Okay.
too.
I'm sorry.
We received Moneytech voted their assessment for FY21 again. They reduced it by $12,086. So that would be available for us at the annual town meeting if it needed to be reappropriated, or it will fall towards the balance at the end of the year at the closeout. Maya, our health insurance company, released their rate range at the MMA meeting, and the rate range for all their member communities is going to be between a negative 0.6% with an average of 2.9% and a high of 6.8%. So I talked to our representative, she said maintain right now our 3% increase, but we'll receive our renewal mid to late February. They also announced a holiday premium. So last year we got the holiday premium for half a month for the month of July. And this year they're doing a full month. So this is a significant savings for both town and school and employees, because that will save, employees won't have to pay any premium for 1 month in fiscal 22. So you'll see that as part of the budget presentation. And related to Peter's question, the governor's proposed budget was released. There was a 3.5% increase in the unrestricted government aid, less than that for Chapter 70, and not much of an overall increase, bottom line increase. If you look at both the assessments and state aid that would be coming in, compared to what the final budget for fiscal 21 that was voted in November. But if you do compare it to the numbers that we used for our estimates at the special town meeting, it is more because we voted on those estimates and submitted for our tax rate before the final FY21 budget was approved. Also, Karen and I discussed reaching out to our financial advisor and actuary to come in to a finance meeting, but wanted to talk to the committee about possible dates. Maybe it would be a budget hearing night, but starting at 6, so they could, you'd have discussion before you start your budget meetings.
Are you guys open to that? 6 o'clock start for the actuaries and?
Yep.
Okay. Then does it matter where in the schedule it goes? If it's possible to do it on the fire and police night, I would do it there.
That's what I would recommend too. Not in the 18th. So the 25th, we'll try to schedule them for.
And that's in February?
Yes.
February 25th, okay. So we'll schedule a 6 o'clock meeting for that night.
And that's all I have.
Any questions from anybody for them?
I did have a chance to look at some of the numbers that came out in the governor's budget, and there are some variances and a little bit more in Chapter 70, a little bit less, and certain charges and that kind of thing. It's not a substantial difference from where we were last year. But when you start to compare and look at some of the other communities around us, and the governor's budget message, said in a very positive tone that they were fully funding the plan for the education reform bill that came out a couple of years ago. But we know what that means for Lunenburg. So when, there are towns around us that saw 5, 6, 7% increases in Chapter 70, and we're less than 1%. And so, people just, again, need to be aware of that. And to whatever extent we can pressure our legislators to help us in that regard, I think we need to do that. I had forwarded a question last week when the Representative Sina and Senator Cronin were at the selectmen's meeting about, what's their position on local aid and where does it fall in their priorities. And the answer that both gave was, we need more revenue, millionaires tax, that kind of thing, which I don't have a strong opinion on one way or the other, but the likelihood of raising revenues this year through new taxes, I don't think is high. The question is, if you have $1, how are you going to divide that dollar? And we didn't get an answer from either of those legislators in that meeting. And here we are another year where in my opinion, we're getting shortchanged on local aid.
So do we have like a specific not wish list, but like list of things that are really important to our community that go to them on a regular basis? Because, I watched the selectmen meeting too, and it was kind of like a meet and greet and, kind of cordial, but, there's some real problems that we face that some of our neighbors don't face. And top of the list on mine is not public transportation and solving, the Paris Climate Accord for, Lunenburg.
Carbon neutrality.
Yeah, so, those are good national level things to get involved with, but we're talking local issues here, and that's where they should be focusing on. And it seems to me that we need to be very proactive in helping them to know what our issues are and not make them try to figure it out. Especially with, Rep. Sena, because he's not from this area. He's, more east of here, but, Senator Cronin, he's more local, probably is a little more tuned in, but so I don't know, maybe there's even a financial, FinCom perspective to that of where our key concerns are and where they need to help us if possible.
Well, I know that maybe, and I also just wanted to say that the town manager and others meet fairly regularly with the legislators to keep them up to date on, especially when something was coming up in legislation that could potentially hit some of our funding priorities. So, and I'm going to assume, I don't know if that's continuing for you, that the legislators are continuing to be as accommodating. So,
Yes, I mean, obviously we have two brand new legislators, so, but it's catching them up to speed on what our budget priorities have been, the bond bills, that type of information. But they're very responsive. I reached out to all three yesterday about the rollout of the vaccination process for our seniors. They were right on top of it, signed on to a letter that Senator Goby spearheaded about getting a 1-800 number. So I feel like they're responsive to our needs when we bring it to their attention.
The problem is that the local, the biggest issue, the thing that affects us the most from a financial perspective, and yes, the earmarks and bond stuff is great, and we absolutely need that. The biggest issue that affects us is local aid, Chapter 70 and Chapter 90, by far, in terms of what they can have an influence on. And we're behind the 8 ball on that stuff because of the way these formulas were rewritten last year. And we've been talking about it for over a year now, and we haven't gotten a straight answer from a single legislator on the topic. So, the only way that they're gonna, is we've got to confront them on it and get the answer.
I believe that's part of conversations that the superintendent does and has had with our legislators as far as Chapter 70 funding and the Student Opportunity Act and
but it's never, as a member of the Finance Committee and as a member of the public, I'm not privy to any of those conversations.
yeah, I think that, and it's not the conversations that are particular. The part of the issue is just understanding what the formulas are and how it is that Lunenburg finds itself in a situation where it ends up presenting so well off. Is basically what's happening, is that basically Lunenburg is, and I'm sure that part of it is just that it's the shifting demographic continues to shift from agriculture to suburb. Basically, we're going from rural to suburb, and it would be interesting to try to get a sense of what the demographics are. And how they affect the formulas that are being used by whether it's DESE or the state in other situations, DOR, whatever. Because there's a lot of places where we just seem to be losing out, and a lot of it is that the income level of the town is changing, and it's putting us in a bracket that most of the town can't keep up with. It's really kind of,
well, that's completely true. But, we also, what's happening here is we've got a governor that's saying that they've fully funded the plan this year for the Student Opportunity Act. Okay, that's great.
right.
Well,
Right.
Last year we were told they didn't fully fund it, and therefore the formulas worked against us because it wasn't fully funded. Okay, I get that. I understand that. Well,
Right.
but we've gotten two different stories now, right? Like, and I know that in the past, before I joined, you guys had somebody who had come in from Boston and kind of explained the formulas and how they work. I think that would be helpful from an educational standpoint to
Sure.
kind of get us to understand more about how this works and how it's affecting Lunenburg.
Okay.
But at the end of the day, we're not getting as much money. I mean, it's as simple as that. And the only way to fix that is through our legislature. That's it. That's the only way to do it.
And I agree with the notion of put them on camera and have the Lunenburg Ledger reporting out on their answers on stuff and on their follow through on actions for our community, because they represent our community as much as they do, the others that they represent. You know, in Massachusetts, it's all about Boston, and we got to fix that.
I will say that they have been doing more so than I've ever seen. They appear to be meeting as a regional consortium and making plans and actually doing stuff more than I've ever seen in the last few months. And it could just be the way they're communicating it. But it does seem like there has been kind of a spearheaded regional legislative initiative that I'm very hopeful for. But, you know, that doesn't solve our Chapter 70 problem.
Anything more, Heather? No? Okay. Then, trying to think, Karen, do you actually, either Heather or Karen, what is the name of the guy that comes out from Boston? Is he retired? That goes through the formula? Actually, but that's just really school funding formula that he goes through.
That was prior to me.
I don't remember his name.
But I know who you, oh, Mark Abrams.
Yes, Mark Abrams. Yep. Is he still out there?
He is still out there because he still teaches all kinds of classes to accountants in the state. So I know he's still out there.
Yeah, I would, well, we can try to bring him in, but not until after the budget hearings, because he's not somebody who you can, no. It would be really data heavy. It would be, a lot. But yeah, I think you're right. I think it would be helpful to hear from somebody like him about, you know, like how they come up with, the numbers that they come up with. And they're not getting better. Policies. Dave,
Yes.
what do you want to talk about?
Well, as I said, I haven't had a chance to actually look at the fiscal policy, so I would have had more to contribute this evening. But if my recollection is correct, in our discussions at the last meeting, in respect to the Capital Planning Committee and its charge and its part of the policy, I just want to verify that this committee agreed that they'd like to have the Capital Planning Committee review their part of the policy and come back with recommendations to FinCom as part of the overall look at our policy over time. The capital planning part of it, I would hope, would move forward quicker than a complete review and adjustment of the policy, only in that we started talking about this not too much before the budget season started, but it was before the budget season, and then realized that there was no way we could institute policy changes to go into effect for the 2022 budget. And we have discussed a couple of times in the capital planning meeting that we should be able to institute any changes that we agree on through our committee, finance committee, and to the Board of Selectmen to make the final changes to affect the 2023 budget process. And Heather alluded to that earlier this evening, warning the department heads that the dollar threshold for capital projects is likely going to jump. Our committee has talked about 30,000. There was actually discussion before that motion was made of jumping it to 50,000. So that hasn't been flushed out completely, but I think we're going to land in this vicinity of 30,000. So that's pretty much what I've got at this point. And then the other criteria, we haven't fully reviewed it to see if there's some tweaking that we want to do there. The goal, and I think most people agree, is to at least get the threshold up and push some of these smaller projects that really shouldn't be considered capital projects back into the budget, departmental budgets, as we talked about briefly with the town manager earlier in this meeting also. That's going to be a shift of revenue over time. But I think it's a better way to maintain the town's infrastructure than the way we've been doing it in the past. And most of that is my interpretation. Nothing has been discussed that thoroughly in the capital planning committee.
Well, I mean, I'm comfortable with the idea that the capital planning committee identify what it is that it wants in that policy, and then either invite us in, or come here. It doesn't really matter to me, but I think that, yeah, I don't have any problem with you guys, like hashing out what you're looking for to be in there.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned that I don't know how to put this carefully. I think I've been a little concerned because I've had to backpedal to get the agenda item to make sure it stays on the agenda. I think.
Oh, you have to do that here. I mean, like basically.
Yeah, no, but I mean, well, that's true too. Yeah, but I mean, there was quite a discussion at in our first or second meeting of the capital planning committee, and we do have a relatively new committee again. 50%, actually more than that. I think Damon's the only one on the committee now that's been on at all before this year. But there was a lot of interest in forging forward with that in the first couple of meetings, and then and I specifically remember asking that it be on the agenda for every one of the meetings, and I've had to chase it. So I'm not sure where the priority is in the mind of the rest of the committee. I think I'll have a better.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be hard. I mean, basically, as a finance committee, I don't know that I certainly, and again, I'm happy for anybody who has an opinion to voice it. But I mean, my sense is that it would make more sense to me that it come from there. It start from there, because I would be. I think from a budget perspective, yeah, 30,000 makes sense, but I don't know if that's the only change that would be appropriate in the capital plan portion of the fiscal policies. So
right. And on the finance committee side, we've briefly discussed it off and on over the past 2 years, and we haven't made a concerted effort to dive into it. Even John Henshaw said that, yeah, it's really time to start doing a thorough examination of the policy because it's been a number of years.
Mm-hmm.
So could I make a comment here? So I think that with respect to capital planning, I've never been on the capital planning committee. I'm extremely appreciative and respectful of the work that comes out of the capital planning committee. If I don't always agree with it, and have proposed amendments in the past, I think that, having not gone through the process myself, I do put a tremendous amount of reliance on the recommendations of the committee itself and the former members of those committees as well. And I'm skeptical of these changes from the onset. I think I voiced that. But I really need somebody to kind of walk me through this and the logic behind it, a thorough walkthrough of the logic behind it. And I don't know who else would be able to do that other than, somebody who is approved by the committee to do it. And that might be you, it might be Damon, it might be the committee as a whole. But I feel like that deserves time and attention before I vote to recommend a change to policy.
And I think it's also helpful that, like currently we have on the finance committee 2 people who have sat on the capital planning committee. Mm-hmm. So certainly there's some perspective there that's helpful. But again, I think until hearing from the capital planning committee what it is that they think would be appropriate to change, I'm not sure I would feel comfortable weighing in. And actually it might, and I would actually almost like to not necessarily participate in a discussion the first round, but certainly sit in, so if you guys do have it brought up at a Zoom meeting, and I can get in touch. What was it? Was that what Damon was trying to get in touch with me before about, that we were going to be talking about fiscal policies? So I can reach out to him and, like just ask if it's going to be on an agenda. And then I'd let the finance committee know so that we could at least sit in on the conversation and participate or not. And I'm happy to do that. I'm happy to reach out to him that way.
There are some other aspects of obviously of the fiscal policy that do not apply to capital planning. And I do think that we should go through a disciplined process of reviewing the fiscal policy. And if that's an annual project or what, like the school committee does, they have literally a roster of all of the policies and they review them on a calendar. And I think maybe we should think about that. I've got a couple areas that I think deserve discussion. One is around, the authority to spend money on off budget items and that sort of thing. There's another area, just escaped me, but there's a couple other areas where I think deserve some discussion. The budget, the borrowing limits, we're going to need to discuss at some point in the near future. So we should probably plan to have a somewhat structured approach to that.
Okay, well, you'll have found another Heather by then.
Perhaps.
Because I'm thinking that basically, I'm trying to think of when the calendar would be best to like scope that out.
It might be outside budget season. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. And because basically the budget presentation is in 2 weeks. And then after that, we're in departmental hearings. So, but yeah, actually that gives us April. So we could put it on the books for April and pull out the whole policy procedure. But I also think that it might also be good that for those areas that you have particular interest in, finding out one of the things that we went through with the initial capital plan was identifying where there was a lot of tie back to the state law around what was involved in budgeting, and so what the backstory was in terms of all of the policy development, what was acceptable, what wasn't, does it fall within our where does it fall in whether it's town charter, town bylaw, town whatever, which actually would be, so it'd be interesting to go through and identify from those categories, like what and again, so it might be a good research project between now and April to take a look at, okay, so what does chapter 90 allow for? And and then basically have some kind of a policy around that, whether it's just consistent with practice or whatever, so that there's no question of the practice being followed or not. Which actually, like also just kind of triggers in my head that there are 4 seats available on the bylaw committee.
Review. Yep.
Yeah. So if anybody has a hankering for working on the bylaw review, I don't know how close they are to seating a committee. Heather might know that if she's gotten any talent bank forms in for that, but
I heard rumor of one name.
it's just a rumor. I've been trying to talk her out of it.
Are you sure?
I think it's wonderful. I tried to get her to run for selectman.
I know you did.
Select board, excuse me.
But anyway, all right. So yes, all right. So what we'll do then is April we'll have, we should have open. Everything should be open in April because we'll be done with all the budget hearings and the town meeting isn't until May. So we can set aside time for the policy review in April.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I'm just trying to but it also, if you guys are going to be discussing it at capital planning, if you could just shoot out an email or something indicating that it's on the agenda for a particular night, and then maybe,
Just so you know, it is definitely on the agenda for February 2nd. It was added late this afternoon.
so next week.
I don't know how, yes, and I don't know how deep we're going to get into it, but I get the sense we've got a quick review of the capital plan and then we can get into that. But we've also got the pressure of the select board meeting after ours, and at least Tom needs to get to that, so.
Okay, I see what you're saying. All right. Anything else on that? No?
No.
Public comment. Anybody on the committee have public comment? I don't have anything in my email. I don't see any public. I don't see any hands up. So with that, our next meeting will be February 11th. Heather will be presenting the initial budget. And then we're into departmental hearings. So with that, I'm more than happy to accept the motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Peter moved, David second, Chris, all in favor, Chris. Heather,
Aye.
Dave,
Aye.
Peter,
Aye.
Jay,
Aye.
Evan,
Aye.
and I for myself. See you in a couple weeks.
Night, everybody.
Good night.
Everyone.